All right, what is up? We have some quarterfinal action from a tournament. The PCS Conquerors Cup qualifier is going to be between Ramos Snyder, I do not know if I pronounced that correctly, versus Pettish. And boy, was this a fun game. The 30-year-old Ramos is from Salamanca, Spain. I also hope I pronounced that correctly. And is currently aligned with Team Runeterra. In his very first Legends of Runeterra tournament, and that is this tournament, he has managed to make it into the top 8. So we're going to see here in this game if he can take down Pettish and advance to the top 4. The 21-year-old Pettish, on the other hand, is from Russia. He is not on any team right now, but he definitely is not a stranger to tournaments, having previously competed in the Russian King Poro tournament. So, as always, if you guys are wondering how you can compete for the Conquerors Cup and a chance at the $500 grand prize come later in August, all the information you're going to need is going to be in the description below for the players, the tournament, anything you need, going to be down there. So hit that sub button, smash that like button, and strap in for some quarterfinals Conquerors Cup action. So, we do have the bans in. So, we have Ramos banning, and somebody else in chat also called him Ramos too, so I feel better now. So, Ramos banned Heimer Vi, and Pettish banned Noxus, I almost said Noxian because we were just talking about Fervor, Noxus Bilgewater. So, we have the aggro banned out on one side, and the Heimer Vi banned out on another, which I feel like Heimer Vi almost always gets banned out at this point.
Pretty much. Which player had their Heimer Vi banned?
So Ramos banned it, so that means Pettish no longer has access to it.
Okay, so we are going to get to see the Lucian Misfortune and the Draven Darius pairing into the Heimer Vi of Ramos. Okay. Can I
just throw this, and we do have about maybe a minute or so until we do get into this game here. So, but I do want to just quick shout out to Biflosaurus in this tournament, and I think you said there was one other person, but he's playing Brom Lux. And more importantly, 3 copies of Aurora Borealis. So I'm like all in on Biflosaurus. Like I kind of want him to make it to at least the semis, but definitely the finals, because that would be absolutely awesome if we could see a deck with multiple Poro snacks, multiple Aurora Borealis. That's a mouthful too. Actually take home a victory here.
All right, so it was Dartil as the other player playing the Brom Lux with the 3 Aurora Borealis.
Dartil, okay, cool. That's pretty exciting, I'm not going to lie. And I will say, we saw last week, when I was casting this, we did see a lot of original decks that were played in general. And I don't know if that's because there's such a large representation of countries here. But with that said, we're getting into game number 1. So let's head on over.
Were you about to say their names and then realized you couldn't pronounce Ramos's name and just kind of pulled back? That's what it sounded like to me.
No, we got Ramos versus Pettish, and I'm going to update this match score here because it is currently 0-0. This is the first game of the round.
All right, I'm just checking real quick. Every time I see a Heimer Vi list in someone's lineup, I'm not going to lie, I just kind of glance over the list because these decks have been solved for so long. I feel like I just need to peek back in because, as you had mentioned, these are some pretty unique decks, and I want to make sure that there's not some absolutely buck wild tech in this Heimer Vi that I'm missing out on, but it does look like a pretty standard list.
Yeah, that's on the side of
Ramos.
So Ramos. So, yeah, you got 3 Claws, 3 Shadow Assassin, 3 Monk. The 2 and 2 of Deny and Spirit's Refuge, and then pretty much 3 of everything else. So yeah, this has got to be the number 1 played version of the deck.
Yeah, with the Gauntlet coming out, I had to make sure there was no like Catastrophe coming out or anything like that.
And hopefully we don't see that bug this game. Speaking of Vi, with man, I'm so sick of seeing the Gauntlets. Speaking of Gauntlets, I should say, hovering over the hand. But we do see the Thermo early on here. Always feels good as the Vi player to get a Thermo off of one of those 1 health units.
It's so strange to me though, because the Thermogenic Beam feels like one of the best removal tools against this deck, and there are so many targets that can only get hit by that Thermogenic Beam. Basilisk Rider, Darius, like these are pretty much out of the range of everything else. Even something like a Crimson Disciple on 2, but Pettish actually just doesn't have the punish here.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like you wish you could save Thermo for like Darius or Basilisk or basically anything. But you can't because of the time value of your Nexus health essentially. Like you need to be at 20 for as long as humanly possible. And honestly, going into turn 3, being at 20 health right now on the side of Ramos is pretty big for him.
Yeah, we do see this Claws of the Dragon, which is why I was a little surprised to see the Thermo in the Precious Pet. I understand that, sometimes you look at that Precious Pet and you go, okay, this is going to deal 8 damage to me if I don't kill this right now.
Yep.
But I feel like because Ramos had that Claws of the Dragon, that probably wouldn't have been a bad answer to it. And now we're probably going to see it come out here to answer this Iron Ballista unless he really wants to throw out this Get Excited. But I don't love his discard targets. I think it would have to be actually probably Deny, just looking at Pettish's deck list, because there is no Harrowing in a deck like this. You're pretty limited on your options for that. It's really just Decimate and Whirling Death, since we've mentioned there is only the one Noxian Fervor.
Yeah, I mean, Deny on Decimate does feel like a pretty game-shifting play, though, as well, and I think that's why he's opting to not get rid of the Deny here in this situation. I do agree it's probably a better target just because of Harrowing not being in the deck. I actually probably would have liked to see Flash of Brilliance discarded. I mean, obviously, drawing a Heimer and then having that flash is super good, as always, but I don't know if you can really play towards what you could draw. I think you should be playing towards what's useful right this second in your hand.
Yeah, the one thing that I did just want to check on and touch on really quickly is that Ramos, we've seen a couple, versions of the Heimer Vi deck running 3 copies of Deny. Ramos has only brought 2, so it's a little more understandable to me that he did hang on to that Deny.
And here we go, my first chat interaction on the 15-minute delay here, so we'll see how that goes. We do have, so I'm interested to see how this Draven plays out, right? Because I personally, I just mentioned, yesterday I was streaming and went 12-0 with the Harrowing version of the Darius deck, and I never play Draven when I play it, so I'm curious to see if this Draven does give him the advantage in this matchup. And with the Claws of the Dragon being played right now, it does look like it is doing some good work.
I'm actually a little curious if there's a Freljord champion that you could play a little bit better in a deck like this. So I definitely like the Draven in the Shadow Isle version because I think that Atrocity and Harrowing are very important cards. I don't like adding Elise because it really dilutes your allegiance pools. But here, Pettish is only running Fury of the North. Reasonably, he could run 3 more Freljord cards if he really wanted to. And I'm a little curious to see if Braum could be something that maybe actually, comes out of a deck like this.
Can he really run 3 more Freljord cards if he wanted to, though? Do you really ever want to miss Allegiance? Like, that feels so bad when that happens.
There are a lot of game-ending, I missed Allegiance kind of triggers. Bannerman is one of them, but I definitely feel like Basilisk Rider not getting the Overwhelm is probably a little more backbreaking than, missing an Allegiance on something like a Vanguard Bannerman. And so far, even though it's been what seems like a really slow start for Pettish, I still really like the position that he finds himself in. And that's probably just because, Ramos doesn't have a Heimerdinger. If we do see him pick one up in the next couple of turns, this match could swing heavily in his favor. But there's so much Overwhelm on the side of Pettish still that I'm not sure a Heimer's going to make too much of a difference.
I gotta agree with you there. And he's even got the Decimate to kind of finish things off. He has the Darius in there as well once he does get Ramos below 10. And just, again, looking at Ramos's hand, he doesn't really have too much to... Actually, that Vi helps a ton. I don't know. The Vi can be at 3 and will end up being able to pull something of value over the next turn, but he did already attack. So as far as this turn is concerned, there's not really much he can do to remove anything on the side of Pettish's field.
Yeah, even if Ramos did have the opportunity to attack with the Vi, Pettish could actually kill it with a Spinning Axe onto the Iron Ballista and a Whirling Death follow-up. But I'm actually really curious to see if Pettish is going to fire off the Decimate here while Ramos doesn't have Deny mana.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing about Whirling Death in this matchup, right? Like, it makes you, just because we, all have access to the deck list, as Ramos does for Pettish, you now have to play around Whirling Death, and that's a hard card to play around. Like, Ruination, all right, everybody knows how to play around Ruination, but playing around Whirling Death, it just completely messes your thought process up when thinking about who's blocking who and who's attacking. So I have a feeling we might see some pretty crazy plays with this Whirling Death coming up.
Yeah, I was a little surprised to see Pettish just kind of float that 2 mana, not wanting to get the Demolitionist down, not wanting to open himself up to something like a Mystic Shot, although he did have the Fury of the North to prevent something like that. It makes sense that he kind of held back because he did want to get the Darius down this turn, and Ramos top decking this second Deny makes me very, very sad that he didn't discard the first copy to the Get Excited earlier, and it feels like he's getting really punished for getting rid of this Deep Meditation.
Yeah, because these Denies are basically useless. Probably the one downside of Deny is just having a bunch in your hand that you can't use. I'm going to, just to your point about Imperial Demolitionist, I do think he's specifically saving it for the Crimson Disciple combo, mainly because we're now on turn 6, and his opponent's still at 17. That's obviously not where an aggro deck wants their opponent by turn 6. So I think he's realizing that he needs to get the maximum amount of damage from every unit that he can, and which is specifically why he's saving that Imperial Demolitionist. And now he's able to have the 3 spell mana alongside this Darius, which still saves enough for that Whirling Death, which again, that could be a pretty crazy combat in this round.
Yeah, unfortunately for Pettish, Ramos does have 9 mana, which means we're going to be able to see something like a Will of Ionia to come out to answer the Whirling Death, or maybe even a Deny onto it, just to get them out of Ramos's hand, since he does have so many copies, although I do think Will onto the Darius is a little more likely. I think the way that this is going to play out is we're going to see the attack, we're going to see Ramos proactively Will of Ionia the Darius, followed by the Whirling Death, followed by the Deny, and I don't think this actually works out super well for Ramos. They're going to get the Darius off the field, but they're going to lose quite a bit here.
Yeah, I got to agree. I mean, Ramos has a lot of answers. The problem is after this turn, he doesn't have any more answers, and he probably just needs a Heimer at that point to really do much. So we'll see what he does. It looks like he is going to do the Will on the Darius, like you were mentioning. And God, Will, man, Will, that card. It's been everybody's talking about it every damn day. If you play Legends of Runeterra for even like a week, if you've played for just 1 week and you're a new player, you probably hate that card already. It's a ridiculously good card. Definitely talked about for potentially the next patch. And we do see the Whirling Death come out like we thought, and I think the Deny, yes, is now going to come out. He pretty much has to play the Deny at this point just to get rid of 1 in his hand.
Yeah, and I do, as I had mentioned, this works out pretty well for Pettish. You're getting a lot of resources out of your opponent for really not a lot of commitment. You are going to lose both of your units here, but it looks like Pettish has actually decided to commit both Spinning Axes to taking this Vi off the field right now. It looks like it's going to be the Demolitionist discarded. And I would have to assume that the second Whirling Death is going to be the other discard. I don't think you're in a position where you're going to get a lot of value out of that anytime soon.
Yeah, and we do see the Sphere of the North here as well. So now, after everything is said and done, regardless of if he uses this spinning axe, I said whirling axe, the spinning axe, by the way. Now that leaves Pettish, after all these cards disappear and everything's off the field, with a Decimate and a Fury of the North to Ramos's Deny, and 2 spells that really aren't going to do anything unless he draws a Heimer right now. And although the Deny will kill the Decimate, this Darius is going to come back down. If this Darius comes back down, we're going to see a Fury of the North on a very big boy Darius, and that's a lot of damage.
All right, so Pettish actually deciding to get rid of the Decimate just because with the 2 axes now, Draven is going to level up. So we are going to see that second copy of Whirling Death in Pettish's hand is actually now a leveled Draven. So deciding that if his first Draven dies, he wants to have that backup one. Although I'm not necessarily sure that Fury of the North was correct to keep over the Decimate. Both technically represent 4 damage. Fury gives you a little bit more flexibility. But Decimate being able to be played on your opponent's off turn, as well as represent the immediate 4 damage to get something like your Darius level above, I think would have been pretty impactful. And now we see Ramos once again just not finding Heimerdinger, which is sort of the only weakness of this deck, which is why a lot of people feel like it needs a nerf. If you find the Heimerdinger, you've got the infinite value engine, you've got gas in the tank, you can go as far as you want. It's a road trip that your opponent is just being dragged along the back of your car for. But here, Ramos just doesn't find the car.
Yeah. When you don't draw the card you need, usually you do bad. I agree. That's exactly why Heimer is as powerful as he is right now. And I also agree with what you mentioned about Decimate. Decimate does get you that immediate damage to level that Darius, which is important. And we also saw 1 Deny already come out of Ramos, and he's playing 2. So it's very less likely that he has a second Deny. We know that he does, but just statistically speaking, Pettish, there's less of a chance. So I think what Pettish is realizing that because Ramos isn't drawing Heimer, he wants to try to keep as many units as possible because none of these units are going to get dealt with, period. So if he's able to keep putting more units on the board, that's why he wanted to go ahead and save that Whirling Death with only the Imperial and the Darius left in his hand.
Yeah, I definitely feel like it's sort of an auto concession on your opponent's side when they play that Flash of Brilliance and they don't have the Heimerdinger. But as you had mentioned, I feel like, just wanting that extra versatility of the survivability of the Fury of the North, and I think that's why we see him hesitate so long on the Darius, which is a little bit strange. If your opponent is going to Thermo Beam your Draven, Fury of the North isn't going to save him at this point. It'd only be if they're stringing together like a gotcha and a mystic shot, or like 2 mystic shots. And if my opponent's playing 2 mystic shots on my Draven, I'm completely fine with that at this point in the game.
And wait, so what was it that he discarded again for the get excited super early?
It was Deep Meditation.
Okay, so let's just think back now. I had mentioned Flash of Brilliance. Again, I really, really, truly think that when you have to think of what to keep in your hand and what to not keep, I think
This
you
is just
always,
lethal.
yeah, this is just lethal right here. I think you always discard what does nothing at the current moment in time. And I think that's exactly why you should discard the Flash of Brilliance, because we saw that he played it here, and although he didn't get necessarily a terrible card off of it, he's still going to die anyways. Deep Meditation could have not only pulled him 2 spells that would be useful, but could have thinned his deck to possibly draw Heimer earlier.
Yeah,
So-
I definitely felt like Deep Meditation was not the discard there. Whether you wanted to discard the Deny or the Flash of Brilliance, Deny does have such fringe use in this matchup. When we see him actually get hard punished for it,
Wow.
it was a little unlikely for it to play out that way, but he does get hard punished for hanging on to that Deny.
Wow. So that's a very quick aggro. Actually, I shouldn't say very quick. I meant to say the opposite of that. Very slow aggro win, which usually we see this deck or aggro-esque decks or burn decks and stuff like that. They win a lot faster than that. But we can see, what was it, 17-0 that we just saw in like 2 turns from turn 6. So that's pretty crazy.
And that Draven that we were talking about a little bit earlier actually came up really big in that matchup. Getting the evolution off, having access to that second Whirling Death. Mostly just, being able to have your 3-mana unit trade on a Vi was absolutely pivotal for Pettish being able to pick up that win, sort of maintain the board presence. And of course, Ramos just bricked really, really hard. He drew nothing. He got a Dragon's Rage off of his Flash of Brilliance, followed by a Spirit's Refuge top deck just taunting him that he didn't have any units available to him.
You mean Dragon's Rage isn't good? Come on, man.
Well, you don't have any units.
Yeah, not when you have nothing to use it with. Yeah, that was, it kind of feels bad a little bit on the side of Pettish, but we'll see going into this next matchup here if he can go ahead and come back and get 2 wins.
All right, so this matchup is going to be a little bit more interesting. We do have Pettish on this Lucian Misfortune Bannerman, and then Ramos has shifted over to the Brahmanivia. I feel like the Brahmanivia is typically favored in a matchup like this if they can survive to like turn 4 or 5. Once the Braum starts to come out, and that's kind of always been Braum's place even before the buff, was he was very good against Bannerman because he's very difficult for them to get over. But Pettish has the opportunity to sort of aggro him out before the Braum can come online because the buff did come with the increased mana cost.
Yeah, and I gotta give the advantage here to the Freljord deck just because it's so good at controlling that early game. I mean, it does have the 3 Avarosian Sentries, which, I mean, Lucian will be able to get through those pretty easily, as well as the Misfortune, so it's not really going to provide any value as far as trading is concerned. But I just think all of these removal options, Avalanche now way back in the meta. This thing disappeared a little while ago, and now we're seeing 2 or 3 copies consistently played in so many decks.
So one of the things that we've seen these Brahmanivia players kind of go back and forth on is, do I run 3 copies of Avalanche or do I run 3 copies of the box? And while I personally like the box in a wider spread of matchups, if Avalanche comes down onto this Senna here, that would actually just end the game on the spot. And it looks like he's actually going to play around that and throw the Misfortune down instead.
And this is a very good start for Pettish. Like I was saying before, this Misfortune and the Lucian are pretty much going to negate any blocking potential that this Sentry has. Sure, it'll stave off 3 damage. I don't really know if that's going to matter at this point in the game. We do see in Ramos's hand, he has the Withering Wail as removal, but this is not a great hand. This is a very late game hand. He does have the Kindly Tavern Keeper to kind of keep him in the game, maybe. But again, with 3 health, that Kindly Tavern Keeper just feels like such a bad blocker versus Lucian and Misfortune.
Yeah, and now we know that Ramos doesn't actually have the copy of Avalanche that we were kind of talking about, so this Senna's going to be a little bit safer to come down in conjunction with the Lucian. But as you had mentioned, yeah, Ramos's hand not looking super well poised to handle this early aggression out of Pettish, who's going to continue to run the train out. I would assume that we see the Grizzled Ranger come down on the following turn. Kindly Tavern Keep. Oh, actually just going to fire off the Sphere then north to trade onto the Lucian. I like this play a lot. Yeah. I think that leaving the Misfortune around is fine, but with this Lucian off the field, very importantly, you take extra copies of Relentless Pursuit out of your opponent's deck.
Yeah, I actually think this is probably his best play, considering what his hand looks like right now, because he does keep another unit on the field to provide himself another blocker. And man, the high-cost cards right now coming for Ramos, again, just not really getting great draws both of these games. And we see Pettish's hand on the other side has a very sweet curve for his entire hand to basically just start throwing down units every single turn, and units that will also highly impact the board right now.
I don't necessarily hate Ramos's position here. He does have the attack token on 6, which is that pivotal Anivia turn, so he's going to get immediate value out of a card like that. Pettish is not running any copies of single combat. Let me just check on that real quick. It's a card that okay. Pettish is actually running the full 3 single combat. It's a card that we've seen get cut out of these Bannerman lists a lot as the sort of impact of the deck has changed. It's become much more of an aggro deck than this, like, let me focus on my 5 and 6 drop type stuff. We do see Pettish running a couple. We have the Radiant Guardians and the Genevieve Elmhart, Cithria the Bold, basically non-existent in these lists anymore. But without copies of, you know, these 6/6 Cithrias and the 5/5 Garens, I feel like single combat isn't getting as much value as it typically does. Though Pettish is running 3 copies of Riposte, which is another sort of substandard adaptation that he's brought out here. We see no copies of Relentless Pursuit, which has become very much a standard 3 of in a list like this. And I actually think without any copies of Relentless Pursuit, Pettish is going to have a very difficult time winning the game once this Anivia gets online.
Yeah, like his hand looking like it does now, you know, he's in a decent spot, but I agree. Late game, if he needs to push for that little bit of extra damage with something like a rally, he doesn't have it. And that is a very interesting decision made by him. I mean, I'm trying to think of what value he can get off of Riposte in the coming turns, right? But, like, what is he? You're going to trade with an Anivia? And, like, now the Anivia just comes back. So, I got to agree with you. The Riposte is a little bit questionable, especially in a meta right now where this Braum Anivia deck is just rampant everywhere.
Yeah, I'm definitely a little confused by the sort of deck building choices that Pettish has gone here, but, you know, because he did go for the ban strategy of not banning the Heimervai, maybe he just said, I don't care about any other deck. My deck is specifically here to beat the Heimervais and the Karma Ezreals. I can lose every other matchup on the planet. It doesn't matter. And maybe that's why we still see the 3 single combats in the Riposte. You know, single combat, while it's not going to have a lot of use in a widespread of matchups, pretty much anything in your deck is going to be able to kill a Heimerdinger with that.
Yeah, and just as we were saying, or just as I was saying about his hand, you know, you get 2 Vengeances. It kind of seems like a very bricked hand with just how big of units there are. Ramos is still sitting at a pretty 19 health, and this is turn 5. So if Pettish, you know, can't win in the next maybe 2 turns here, or at least do a significant amount of damage in the next 2 turns, it's going to be rough for him to really, you know, put on the aggression he's going to need to win this game, because at that point, you're looking at turn 7 from Ramos. Vengeances are online pretty consistently. You're going to have an Anivia as a blocker and or unit removal with her effect being able to do 1 AoE damage and then eventually level. And if she levels, if you had a leveled Anivia versus this deck that Pettish is playing, I don't really know if there's a way for Pettish to win at that point.
Yeah, even without the Relentless Pursuits, though, it looks like Pettish is going to smell the blood in the water. I think the Senna is pretty likely to come down here as well. And that means Pettish is pushing through a lot of damage that Ramos is going to be able to get back a little bit with the Kindly Tavern Keeper, but without any copies of Grasp of the Undying in the deck, he's actually a lot lower on healing than your typical, you know, Bald Eagle deck.
Yeah, and it's kind of an awkward spot for Ramos. Like, I'm sure he was just, like, maybe considering playing that Tavern Keeper there, but he only gets 1 health off of it. He could have obviously blocked something, which would have been good, maybe trade with the Bright Steel or something like that. But because of that barrier on the Misfortune, this Withering Whale isn't really going to get any value either. So I think you're right. I think this Senna is going to come down, and we're going to be looking at, what was that? Oh, God, here comes the math again. 13 damage, because I'm good like that. And then, you know, we'll heal 3, so 10 when everything's said and done.
It's actually 14 damage because of the Misfortune ability.
Damn it. All right, you got my back, though. You got my back. So 14, then healing 3, so that's 11. So you should be at 8 after that. Hopefully I did that math right. And that's going to put Ramos in a kind of a tough spot, especially going into next turn with just really no units. Developing an Anivia is not really going to do much for him, as Pettish is just too wide right now. He's not going to have enough blockers.
Yeah, and I think this Ranger's Resolve in Pettish's hand is actually going to be like the game-winning play here, because that, you know, Ramos needed to get off Anivia on turn 6, followed by Withering Whale on turn 7 in order to clear out this board. And Pettish has his, you know, he can Ranger's Resolve either one of those abilities, and Ramos isn't going to be able to clear the board. He needs to top deck Ruination right now.
Yeah, that's a good card. That would help. I also did some good math for once in my life, so hell yes. And yeah, Ruination is pretty much needed right here.
And gets Ruination.
Oh, wow. Good call. This is like the opposite of the caster curse, right? This is great. This is great.
Pretty
Now,
much.
We're just going to call cards the rest of the day. We're calling top decks here.
And one of the concerns that a lot of Shadow Isle players have is, you fire off this Ruination on your opponent's turn, and then all of a sudden they get to refuel. But when you have the Vengeance going into turn 7, you feel so safe to fire off this Ruination. And Pettish doesn't have the hand to punish it. He's got the Riposte and the Ranger's Resolve. He can set up, maybe he's going to go for the... He's probably going to go for the Fleet Feather Tracker and then the Radiant Guardian, just because, spreading out the damage on the units. This does give him a potential lethal with the Riposte onto the Radiant Guardian.
Read. Okay, that's a very good read. I was just going to say, what's the chances Pettish passes? And that's a super good read, because now this Ruination is going to get far less value with that Radiant Guardian waiting to come down.
Yeah, if you're playing a Demacia or any board-centric deck, and you look at your opponent on turn 6, and they have 3 spell mana, and they're playing a control deck, and you don't play around Ruination, you deserve to lose.
So you definitely need to be doing that this turn. I mean, it's still going to feel bad, because Ramos is going to get a sweet, sweet 3-for-1. But like you were saying, that Vengeance, we're probably going to see the Radiant Guardian come down. The Vengeance is going to take care of the Radiant Guardian next turn. So the question then is going to be, is there going to be enough units on the side of Pettish to be able to still do that 8 damage? And it might, depending on his draws, he might actually have the 8 damage still.
I think Pettish has a potential for lethal in the following. I think this is a throw. I think this might just be a throw.
That seems... Well, let's see. If he plays the Withering Wail on the following turn, what's this going to leave him with? 7, 8, 9, that's 10 mana. If he plays the... Oh, he has a Harsh Winds because he played the Anivia.
I'm not sure that's enough, though. So what I was contemplating was if Pettish, gets Ruination, develops the Fleet Feather and the Radiant Guardian, and then throws down Genevieve, I think that might actually just be lethal. Ramos here, I guess maybe having a similar read, deciding that this isn't going to be enough, decides that the Anivia is the best play, but throwing this down post-combat, it does represent 2 blockers if Scouts come out, but I actually think that if Pettish goes for the Genevieve Elmheart, and maybe that's what Ramos is, kind of hoping that he'll do, I don't think he necessarily has lethal through. I think with the Riposte he does. I'm trying to do math here, and it's not really working out for me. I know that if Pettish plays anything, he gets blown out by Ruination, so he has to go for the open attack, and maybe that's where Ramos liked his chances the best. But I don't think the mana lines up for him.
So actually, I think he does have lethal regardless of Harsh Winds or Withering Wail coming down. He does need to play the Riposte in order to have that, but yeah, I think he has lethal either way. I'm not too mad at this play from Ramos, just because playing the Ruination is kind of like a last ditch. You're kind of just screwed into one line of play, whereas this line of play offers him a whole ton of options, especially depending on what his next draw is. This Harsh Wind, I think, gives him a lot more flexibility in what happens next turn. But again, I think he's got lethal anyways with this open attack.
So the awkward part is that if you Ruination, you're killing 3 units. Anivia and Harsh Winds represents taking 3 attackers off the board anyway, so it's effectively the same play, but this commits more mana on the following turn. Which is, I think, why I'm so critical of it.
And we see a third, and we see a third Vengeance. That just feels so bad. He can, he's gonna... I think Harsh Winds is the only thing that actually saves him here, so he has to play it. Or what is he...
I mean, he can go for... Does he have 2 Withering Wails? He's been playing with his hands so much. Okay, yeah, he just moved it to the other side by hovering it, so... Yeah, I think Withering Wail would... Does that even let him live if he goes for it? No, it doesn't. So yeah, it doesn't even have that as an option. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, Ramos is just completely dead here. There's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, and what's funny, though? We were talking about Riposte earlier, and lo and behold, Riposte is actually winning him the game here. Because the Riposte is going to give him enough attack to push through for the victory, and there's no way for Ramos to kill the unit here. Ramos's hand just feels bad, man. And I think even if he did play the Ruination, so here's what he might have been thinking. Regardless of if he plays the Ruination or the Anivia, he still loses to Riposte. No matter what he did in either situation, I think he loses to Riposte. With this line of play, he gets more value out of the Ruination if he does live, right? Because now he'll kill his Anivia, but his Anivia is just going to come back, and he might be able to kill the Radiant Guardian after it comes down, right?
I'm trying to think of what the last turn would have looked like if Ramos, because he played this Anivia post-combat, and I think if he had played it, pre-combat, he at least gets to clean up the misfortune. But what would it have looked like if Ramos started off the turn playing the Anivia, and then just passed priority back over to Pettish when they didn't play anything? Could Ramos have gotten away with just ending the turn with the Kindly Tavern Keeper and the Anivia, making Pettish float all of that mana and then still having that harsh winds for the following turn. I think that would have been Ramos's best line to try and get back into this game, as well as set himself up for a good ruination on the following couple of turns, was just playing the Anivia and not attacking at all that turn.
And that's a quick 2-0 on the side of Pettish. I think that only took maybe, 20 minutes or so. So that's a pretty insane. One was an aggro deck, so we kind of expect that. But actually, then again, the second one is maybe not as aggro as the Noxus Darius Draven deck, but still a very quick deck indeed. So pretty cool deck builds too. Some interesting decisions. We were talking about the riposte being a little bit odd, as well as some of the other choices. And I guess we'll never know if that ruination was played, so it just is what it is. And it's funny too, because we called the top deck. We literally were like, this is the card he needs. He got it, and I still didn't even think it mattered, unfortunately. So he was just too far behind.
Yeah.
So all right, and that is it. We see Pettish take it away from Ramos here. So maybe the experience playing a role in that victory. But I'm very much looking forward to the remainder of this tournament. We are going to have the rest of the top 8 action posted up on this channel. And every Saturday, you can have your own shot to join the PCS Conquerors Cup qualifiers every Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is 8 p.m. in Europe. For anybody who's wondering, if you're in that time zone, CEST. And yeah, as always, guys, everybody stay healthy, stay positive. I hope shit just works for you, and peace out.